Hello and welcome to Retech, and today's going to be very different. And you're going to ask, how's it going to be different? Well, you see, we all kind of love our retro computers and our classic and vintage models, and if you've been a fan or watching this channel or watching this video or previous videos, you'll have realized that, you know, there are quite a number of nostalgic and retro and classic and vintage models out there, and they all mean different things to different people. We have the collectors, you also have the nostalgia fans, and you also have the people who are kind of hoarding them, hoping that the value will go up and some future version of ourselves might make some money out of them. But you also have the people who are genuinely interested in these models as well, all of these retro machines from the 70s all the way through to current times, really. And you kind of might start wondering why people who are maybe 1, 2, 3 or more decades away from being actually around on this planet would be interested in these microcomputers. And you know, it's something I kind of put a little bit of thought into recently, but you know, it's one of those things. You think about it, you have a look at your statistics on who's watching and which kind of audience you're hitting and so on, and this channel does hit a lot of the younger audience who probably are interested, and I think the short versions that I've been doing have been hitting a lot more of the younger audience, and also hits a lot of girls as well, which I'm very happy about. And for that reason, you know, I like to go through maybe the machines in a certain way, talk about them, display them, show them what you can do with them, and show them something specific that these machines can do. And that's kind of what I've been doing with this channel. But I was kind of looking through some of my old kit, and I found this, and it answers a lot of questions that, you know, I've just put to yourselves. Why are these people interested in nostalgia kit? Why are these people interested in classic and vintage machines? Well, I can answer part of that. We all know that I've had a keen interest in these micros since I was very little. You know, it's been one of those things. It's kind of followed me through. There were gaps where, you know, I didn't do anything with them, and they kind of sat in store cupboards, or I'd given them away and all this kind of thing, as you do. And then you come back into it, and that seems to be the case for this. But this is a lot more recent. And what's in here was a big part of what I did in my life for a long time. This was a companion machine that I used sitting for hours on end in airports, for hours on end waiting for flights and waiting for trains and all of that kind of thing, sitting in the back of taxis, doing my notes, making sure that I've got everything up to date for my work, making sure that everywhere I went I was ahead of the game in terms of what I needed to do that day and so on. And this little machine basically came with me everywhere. It was pushed through scanners, x-rayed, I don't know, it must have been x-rayed about a good couple of 100 times for flights and, you know, to different places and all that kind of thing. It's been in overhead luggage, it's been stuffed under seats in planes and trains and you name it. This little machine that's in this bag has been everywhere with me. And then it got forgotten about. It got sidelined because I got a new machine. It got left to gather dust, as you can see, and it was left to kind of do nothing. I mean, I used this maybe for 3 years, and then it was just left. So what is it, you're going to ask? What kind of special piece of equipment is this machine? And what kind of machine is it that holds such sway in my thoughts about my past and holds kind of a lot of interest now? It's also got a lot of nostalgia as well, and I'll show you, okay? And then we'll go through what it did, what it could actually do, and what I did with this, okay? So let's just open this up. So in this little case, which has been bounced and dropped Here's one of these. It's a little Acer Aspire One, and you're going to think, well, that's not that interesting. Well, it kind of is now, because it's a NetBook. It's something that you don't see anymore. It's a limited machine with limited memory and limited processing power, and it's not really the most powerful thing in the world. It barely runs things like, at the time, videos, interactive videos. It barely deals with largish files. It barely deals with big photographs, etc. And you know, there's not really a massive amount of games and stuff that you could get for this, but at the time it was tiny, and it still is relatively small, and it did last quite a while on its battery, but somehow I doubt that this little battery even holds a charge now, because it's been sitting dormant for that long. But the thing with this is, apart from its size, is that you could run either Windows on it, which is, I think that's what I've got on this at the moment. I can't, because I put 2 different operating systems. Or you could hack a version of Apple's OS and put it on here, which is what I did at one point as well. Or you could run a version of Linux Lite, which it originally came with. And it was very good at allowing you to just do your notes, catch up with things, play the odd game, you know, do your whatever you need to do on a simple spreadsheet, you know, connect to your phone if you had the capability at the time, which I believe was just kind of coming into mainstream, because you had the early versions of internet connected phones that were out there, etc. And you know, it could do it, and it would quite happily do most of what you needed. And because it was so small and so light and so innocuous, you know, it wasn't an issue carrying it around. So this machine, with its external USB keys, because I remember you used to have 2 in there for data and all that kind of thing, because it's got such a small amount of storage on board. And also you could expand it through an SD card as well, but you know, USB even back then was a bit more convenient. So this machine did everything. To me, it was a tool. It was something that I used just about every day, and to me it was something that, you know, I didn't really think about. It was a relatively low cost item, and you know, if it broke, it broke. If it got damaged going through a scanner or going through an x-ray machine or being dropped off the end of one of those machines where everyone just shoves their kit through it as fast as they can to get on the plane, then it wasn't the end of the world. I could go and get another one. But thinking about it, this was one of the few machines that kind of stuck with me for a long time, as in I used it all the time. It wasn't like a desktop PC or one of the bigger laptops I was using on my desk, which were really too big and too bulky to carry around where I was going all the time. And it made a difference. It actually changed the way I worked, because I did most of what I was doing on this little machine. So we'll have a quick look at what else was in this bag, because I haven't opened it for so long, it's crazy. We have a external CD drive, and it's one of these CD drives that needs the 2 USB ports to power it, so it's quite power hungry, but you know, it worked. And then you have the little power adapter. So that was it. That was my entire kind of carry-on, apart from whatever I was wearing for however long I was there, or going traveling with, and that was it. That's all I needed. A couple of USB keys, and that was it. You know, how simple is that? Now, a modern mobile phone is arguably hundreds of times more powerful than this, faster than this, more capable than this. If I go traveling now, then the mobile phone does most of what I need, including Google Documents, Google Drives, uploading it to the cloud, all that kind of stuff, everything that I need to do. And if I really wanted to, I could plug in a keyboard and cast it to a TV in a hotel room, you know, and use the biggest screen, all straight from your mobile phone. But that wasn't available then. This was literally the kind of digital lifeline at the time, mainly because it was so small, compact and light, and it was such a useful tool. And one of the other things I used to do on this, I had at the time, a new Triumph Sprint ST motorcycle when I bought this, and I used to use this to tune the ECU on the bike and improve it or make it worse at times when I didn't quite get the mapping right, and you know, do service and do all the resets all off of this little thing. So it kind of got well used, and it holds a lot of nostalgia now for me. I don't have that bike anymore, so you know, unless I do get one which is now a vintage or classic bike, you know, I don't think I'll have a use for this, but I don't even know if it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on, show you around the machine and give you the specs. And the whole point is that our views of vintage and classic machines really are starting to be shifted. You see, because this machine is 12 years old. 12 years old now, and you know, you don't see them anymore. You rarely see these machines anywhere because most of them have been trashed. And you know, it's kind of, where does the line for vintage start and end? Where does the line for nostalgia end? You could have something that's nostalgic that was you know, 6 months ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, and so on. But this little Acer is probably nostalgic to a lot of people, but it's so out of date now in comparison to what we carry around. And it's so old in terms of technology now, because we've come on leaps and bounds since this little laptop was, or this little NetBook was manufactured. So can this really be truly classed as a nostalgia piece? I'm kind of guessing so, really. But, you know, everyone has a different opinion. Can it be viewed as a classic, a genuine classic? Probably not now. Well, no, probably it can. It can be viewed as classic, but I very much doubt it's classed as vintage. But we'll have a quick look at it, and then we'll see what it was all about. Okay, I've just powered the machine on, and it surprisingly still works. And I actually honestly couldn't remember what version of OS I put on. Well, I put Ubuntu on. Obviously it's a Linux distro, and then we've got Windows XP Professional. Now I'm kind of, if I remember right, I used both. I basically used Ubuntu because it was such a stable thing on this little machine when it was out there, and I used the version of XP on here mainly for work related purposes and also for the ECU software that I mentioned. So we'll just go straight into Windows XP, and it's, I think even at the time it was quite novel to see Windows XP running on these, because they virtually came with a version of Linux Lite. And it's a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be booting. And then there we have it. That was background of me on one of my many travels. Yeah, so yeah, it's quite it's quite weird seeing pictures like that from all that time ago, really. And I think that was my old BMW at the time, which I used to extensively kind of run around Europe on. So yeah, that was yeah, I haven't seen that bike for a long time. But anyway, this is Windows, and this is what I used to use it for. I mean, I think I had Opcom on for diagnostics for certain bits of cars as well. We've got Firefox, which I used to use mainly from hotels where I could actually plug the laptop in or connect to some version of Wi-Fi. And then we've got various documents and stuff still on here and photos. So yeah, it actually seems to work. It seems to work fine, which is very, very surprising. As you can see that the photograph is tagged as 2011 on there, so that was a little bit of time ago. So that was about just over a decade ago. So anyway, this machine, okay, the basics of this machine, which I'm really surprised still works. I might have to put it to use now I know it actually works. If I remember rightly on this machine as well, and it still detects the wireless network as well, which is quite cool. If I remember rightly on this machine, I upgraded the memory on this. I believe literally as soon as I got it, I opened it up. It's got a very, very small amount of storage in this. It's so pushing it a bit to have Windows XP and Ubuntu running on the same machine, and it's set to power save a lot because of the batteries as well. It does have a built-in camera. It's got a 0.3 megapixel camera, massively tiny. So it's got the 3 USB ports that I pointed out. It's got a card reader on the side, which I also mentioned. The network interface is a Realtek 10100. It runs basically on a 3-cell 2.2 amp hour battery pack, so that on this machine is going to be completely useless now, to be honest. Now the processor on this was an Intel Atom, which largely kind of got superseded because this is one of the earlier versions, and it was the Intel 945 GSE Express, and this machine was available in lots of different funky colours, from like white to black to pink to coral or brown, and all kinds of weird colours. They were literally trying to make it less of a laptop, a functional kind of work unit, and more of a consumer-led piece, this one. So that's the reasoning behind it. And it can use a modified version of OS X, but there wasn't really any support for it as well. So, you know, I think a lot of people on these smaller machines kind of stuck with Linux, FreeDOS, or even those versions of Android for them. I mean, ever since this model came out, it was very, very popular as a kind of alternative to a laptop. I mean, the keyboard on it was really actually quite decent to type on, although it's quite small, but even so, it had quite a nice feel to it. The entire machine really wasn't badly constructed either. The screens, I was I remember being very impressed at the time with the quality of the screen for a device that wasn't really much more than kind of a couple of £100 at the time, if I remember, because I think I bought this one from John Lewis. I think it was yeah, I bought this one from John Lewis in Cambridge, and it was literally taken out of the box and used, and it was used for quite an extended period. Now, the limitations I did find with this is the fact that I had to use quite a lot of USB keys to store information on, because as you can probably see that the internal storage was only just about coping with the amount of stuff I had on and I was using anyway. So I think that, you know, using USB did slow the machine down a little bit, you know, as far as accessing files and folders and all that kind of thing were concerned, but at the end of the day it was adequate. I mean, it's still adequate now. I mean, it's still runs pretty much quick enough now, to be honest. I mean, if I just, there you go, it's quicker than it ought to be. The whole machine was always seen quicker than some of its parts, which is one of the things I was quite impressed with. And as I said, it was just a throwaway machine when I bought it. It was a machine to do a job. If it lasted me 5-6 months or something, or it got broken before then it wasn't the be all and end all. It wasn't, you know, the end of the world, like throwing at £1,300 down the drain on one of the X61s at the time, which is, you know, the laptop I kind of used more at home or in offices than I did carrying it around. So, you know, it made a lot of sense to go down this route with this machine. And it, as you can see, 10 years after it was put away and forgotten about, it still works. So yeah, this is my little nostalgic kick, which I didn't expect to find, which I'm, you know, quite surprised about. And as you can see, just flicking through, it's definitely faster than it really ought to be. So yeah, it's not a bad little machine overall. I think I'm going to put it to some use. So this is my personal nostalgia kick, and it works around an Acer Aspire One. It's my more modern nostalgia kick, and yeah, I was quite surprised, and I'm really amazed that it still works after all this time. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. So yeah, so nostalgic, classic and vintage machines. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a fluid one. I think for some people, these little Acer Aspires and maybe Compact Desk Pros, Packard Bells from not that long ago, really, in this grand scheme of things, to some people are vintage and classic. You know, to a modern child kind of thing, somebody from the current generation will just look at this and go, how old is that? Because it's nothing like, other than the way it looks, like a modern machine. So yeah, we may have to rethink what is classic and nostalgic really going forward, because eventually I think everybody will have covered everything about the vintage machines from the 70s, 80s and 90s. But when you think about the current machine, or what we call relatively modern machines from the early 2000s, which are still 20 years old or more, well, surely they have a right now to kind of move over into the classic arena. You know, your thoughts on these, because it's an interesting thing, because I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there who have machines that are 20 years old, who have either a good deal of nostalgia for them or view them as classic machines. Anyway, there's some food for thought. Okay, so thanks for watching, and thanks for taking time in my kind of rambling on about these machines, my weird thoughts on what the classic movement may or may not move into. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and please subscribe. Again, please hit the like button if you feel like, you know, it's worth it. If not, well, you know what to do. So thanks a lot. See you soon. Bye bye.